Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey everybody, this is Adam Gumbert. You might know me from Respawn Aimfire, the Kick-Ass Irreverent Gaming podcast from Alpha Idiots, and I'm here today to talk about the 2023 breakout hit. It's an RPG. It's based directly on the 5th edition of a very popular tabletop role-playing game. Here to talk about Baldur's Gate 3. So, listening to this, you might kind of know Baldur's Gate 3 has had sort of a big year. People seem to be liking it. Seems to be doing pretty well at different award shows. But I'm here to tell you exactly why, and a little bit of the history that I've kind of been into this game for the past 3 years. It's pretty wild. So, start from the beginning. Larian Studios, the studio who made Baldur's Gate 3. I was a big fan of their work. Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, some of my favorite games, amazing RPGs. You can definitely see the foundation which they built upon to create Baldur's Gate 3. It was pretty much like, hey, here's our own world. Here's a test bed to show you why we can do this with D&D, with the world's biggest fantasy license, pretty much in certain ways. So when they announced early access, that hey, Larian Studios, those guys who made Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, some of the best RPGs ever made, we are going to make Baldur's Gate 3. We're bringing it back. We're continuing the story. And I was immediately in. Early access launched in 2020, and I was there day one. Spent my full money. I was like, I am here for it. I don't care that it's only Act 1. And we ended up only having one act for 3 years. Didn't matter. It was great. Wanted to be there from the beginning, support these guys. And I was not disappointed at that point. But I would never see that we would get to where we are now, with it being just one of the biggest things ever. But early on, in early access, before we get to, some more stuff, is very cool. We had Act 1, so there's 3 acts in the game. We had Act 1. And we just basically, maybe every 6 months to a year, we'd get a major update. So those first couple of years, I just played the same act over and over and over again. And it's pretty crazy because there's so many huge differences between then and the full release that it's like, yeah, I like how they took the time, built the game with the community, took their feedback, and we ended up getting, a masterpiece in RPGs. If you go back to those early access days, there's like characters that aren't even there. There's classes that aren't there. Entire storylines play out differently, but it's really cool just to think that this dumb little game I paid $60 for 3 years ago ended up being what it became. But we're going to move on to what Baldur's Gate 3 is present. What the thing was that came out that kind of lit a fire under everybody in the gaming sphere. The thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is that I don't know if I've ever played a more ambitious video game. The idea of what this video game is and the fact that it works, to me, is astounding. Like, shout out to Larian. They did a lot of crazy work. It's wild. So basically, again, we're playing a fantasy adventure. I'm not going to spoil anything here or anything like that, but you got your fantasy adventure, you've got your elves and your rogues, but it's kind of weird because we start out with, we're playing as mind flayers have infected some different characters with a tadpole, which will turn you into a mind flayer. That's where we begin the story at. We've been infected by this alien monster. We're going to turn into alien monsters. What are we going to do about it? And from there, it just goes places you could have never seen. But the main thing about the game that is so interesting to me when I talk about ambition and when I talk about, it doesn't make sense how it all works together, is that this is a game that when you make decisions, they actually matter, but in a bigger way than you would assume, right? So when you play tabletop RPG, it's very much an improv. You're reactionary. You're going back and forth off of another person, right? The DM or the GM will be like, all right, you got to get into this building. What do you do? And you normally be like, oh, I'll try to unlock the door, or maybe I'll jump into a window. And then you have crazy players who are like, I'm going to turn into a mouse, crawl down the chimney to the second floor, sleep under the bed until the morning comes, and then unlock the door from the laundry chute on the inside. Something crazy and insane like that. And this game, you can kind of do that. It kind of allows you to do anything that you could think of if you were playing at a real table, but the game just reacts and sort of lets you do it. I'm not going to spoil the game, but here's an interesting situation I ran into later in the game, but it still applies, where you are in a bank. There's a bank. inside of banks, there's vaults, right? And they're all locked up, and sometimes there's magical barriers preventing you, whatever it is. You would think, okay, I just need someone I could, maybe go steal a key. I could get a rogue to lockpick the doors. What you would think normally, oh, there's a vault, I need to get into the vault. The game is so crazy, it allows you. So I basically had a spell that lets you go from one place to another. I'm like, what if I just teleport behind the gate where the vaults are? And you can just do it. The game's like, sure, absolutely. And I have a character who's a rogue. People play D&D. Basically, when you hit a certain level of rogue, you just don't fail whenever you roll certain actions. So I teleported Astarion behind the gate and just picked and stole everything of the vault in the bank. And the game was like, yeah, sure. You don't need to go find a special key. You don't need to do a special mission. Oh, you had the idea and the spell to do it. It just works. It just happens. And it's wild. And again, that is such a small example of what the game really allows you to do. Like, if you can think it, you can do it. There's so much stuff for like, oh man, lining up 100 explosive barrels inside of a base and shooting one and the entire base blows up, or you got to save somebody from they're inside of a burning cage and you're like, I need to defeat the bad guys and help her jump out of the cage. Or you could just like throw a water bottle at it and the fire goes out, or cast a spell which create water, which you think is like, when would I ever need to create water? But it's like, oh no, I could just put her cage out on fire and she can just chill in there for the rest of the fight. It's wild. It lets you do it. And it's so cool and unique. And I don't know how they thought of the permutations to allow you to just do whatever you want to do. And again, that is just stories, but like that leads into everything about the game, such as the conversations. I love it. Again, you play tabletop RPGs, and, you have the idea of like, oh, we're gonna fight everything. We don't need to talk. We don't need to figure it out. Any of it. We're just gonna kill our way through the game. But this game, you can do that if you want, or you can talk your way through it if you're good enough. Like me, I played as a bard, just because I'd never played a bard before in real D&D. And it's so fun being just so good at talking to people. It doesn't matter. Or like, I'll come into like, there's a really creepy boss fight with like a dude who's like a surgeon and he's got really long arms and he's just like this awful, creepy surgeon man. And you can talk your way out of that. It's very difficult. A lot easier if you're a bard, by the way. Or you can just convince him to like let people perform surgery on him and kill him. It's an entire boss fight, which is very difficult to do. And you could absolutely, punch your way through it. But you can, if you're good enough and lucky enough and the dice go your way, you can just talk this dude into killing him, like letting himself be killed by his subjects. And it is so wild that it's like, yeah, do whatever you want, figure it out, and the game will adjust. And here's the thing. I could fail those rolls where I try to convince him what to do. And guess what? The game still continues. Like, I can continue to do whatever. Like, the situation will resolve itself and you will see the permutation of those decisions pass or fail later on in the game. And it's so cool. And I just don't know how they put all those threads together and make it make sense by the end. But Larian really did something special with this one. The last thing that I'll talk about, I think that makes it extra special. Again, you've got all these crazy mechanics. You can do whatever you want. It's awesome fantasy world. It's a fantasy world. You get to play aliens. It's great. It's wonderful. But the main thing about this game that people attach to so much is characters, right? Like, a lot of people, when the game first came out, they're like, hey, here's a 15-minute video of me and the character creator, because people just sit here and do this forever and ever and ever. And it's such a good time. You can, a lot of people talk about representation, getting to create yourself and feeling seen and all that. And then, like, I feel like the character is great at that. You can just kind of be whoever you want, look however you want, play however you want, and you just get to be what you want to be. And they just allow you to do it. And it feels like they don't hold you back at all. But when it comes to the other characters in the game, your party members, people in the world, I think I finally discovered what about this game was extra special. And I think it feels like Mass Effect, where you're doing those crew missions and you're like doing things for your party. We're going to go out here and we're going to do Rex's thing and figure out what's going on with him. We're going to help my boy Garrus out, make sure he's good to go. And this game also does that with these amazing performances. Every character that could be in your party is acted so well, and they all have these crazy awesome arcs with amazing endings. If you choose, you can kind of have bad endings for everybody if you want to, but the idea that they were like, okay, you're with this misfits of weirdos, And then you just, by the end of it, it's like, I would do anything for this person. I will murder the entire world to make sure that Lizelle is good and happy by the end of it. When at the beginning of the game, you're like, man, she seems kind of a curmudgeon and kind of mean. But by the end, you're like, man, no, we're rocking to the end. It's so wonderful. Again, we've seen, different awards of the actors receiving their awards, and it's amazing. There's so many people in here, so many good characters, so many good character moments, character arcs, decisions, romances. This game is AAA horny, and it's not a bad thing because it just allows you to just kind of live that life and do whatever you want to do. But beyond just being everyone is AAA horny, like everyone has AAA heart too, and it's really, really good, and I really appreciate it. But yeah, if anyone hasn't played it, like, you have to. If Mass Effect sounds interesting, if you've ever liked an RPG, period, you have to play Baldur's Gate 3. It is wonderful. It's amazing. It's getting all the love that I saw it getting back in 2020, but even more than I thought it would get back then. So everyone check it out. It's wonderful. I adore this game, and happy gaming.
Hello there! My name is Leo, and I'm here to tell you all about my Dune podcast, Gom Jabbar, the perfect podcast for new fans of Dune and longtime fans of Dune alike. My co-host Abu and I dive deep in both spoiler-free and spoiler-heavy episodes covering, Frank Herbert's original novels, the film adaptations, the board games, the comics, the upcoming video games, the HBO TV series, anything we can get our hands on. We even have a companion book club series to make your first or your 15th read-through even better. So, if you recently saw Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune, or if you read Dune back when it came out in 1965, this is the podcast for you. You can find Gom Jabbar on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts, and we hope you join us on the Golden Path.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.